The Zanari had slaughtered the human girl, ripped apart her fragile body until flesh hung ragged and bones poked jagged from the mangled remains. In the name of their perverse alien justice, now there would be hell to pay. Earth was sending the Stardestroyer. Captain Jeffrey Wright stood rigid as he watched the classified footage, fists clenched tight enough to draw blood. Around the briefing room, the faces of Earth's top military brass were ashen and grim. Wright felt like he might vomit. Little 8-year-old Zara had been the daughter of Earth's ambassador to the Zanari Galactic Empire. She was tortured to death on the Zanari homeworld, her innocent life snuffed out in an unspeakable act of cruelty. The Zanari claimed it was an accident. Lies. This was a deliberate atrocity, a barbaric message to Earth from a vast alien empire that viewed humanity as insects to be crushed. Fury burned like a red-hot coal in Wright's gut. He met the eyes of the ashen-faced generals and admirals, these men and women who had borne witness to the horrific images. Gone was any talk of measured diplomacy or cautious restraint. The question hung heavy in the air, demanding an answer. How would Earth respond to this brutality? What justice could possibly suffice? "We hit them back," Wright declared, his gruff voice low and seething. "We hit them back hard enough to make them regret ever laying a filthy hand on our girl. I'll take the Stardestroyer right into the heart of Zanari space. Me and my crew will capture or kill every last son of a bitch responsible for this. We'll show them what it means to murder a child of Earth." The officers shifted uncomfortably. Even with its revolutionary weaponry and stealth systems, one ship against the might of an empire was a suicide mission. It would be a war Earth couldn't win, assuming the Stardestroyer even survived long enough to fire a shot. But the alternative, Wright argued passionately, was to roll over and signal to the galaxy that humans were cattle to be culled at will. If Earth didn't stand up now, the Zanari would just escalate. He had to make the Stardestroyer's first flight count. It was humanity's only chance to land a devastating blow without plunging into full-scale interstellar conflict. In the end, grasping for any way to avenge the girl and safeguard Earth's honor, they relented. The Stardestroyer was his, her mission given the green light. He would take a crew of volunteers, the best of the best, those with the skill and guts to venture into Zanari space and do what must be done. They were to strike with swift surgical precision. Get in, get out, leave no trace beyond Zanari corpses. One ship against an empire. The Stardestroyer against a galaxy that saw humans as weak, that tortured their children and laughed. The odds were beyond astronomical. Yet Wright couldn't escape the twisting in his stomach, an instinct honed by years on the battle lines. He poured through the reports, the images of Zara's broken body seared into his mind, and felt that something was off, almost like the Stardestroyer was being baited into this, a desperate, ill-fated charge of retaliation. His suspicions seemed confirmed when a message from Wezin, a high-ranking Zanari officer, found its way to him. Wezin claimed the murder was a ploy, that the Zanari wanted Earth to respond like this. The Stardestroyer was flying into a trap, Wezin insisted. A Zanari armada lurked in ambush to destroy the ship the moment it emerged from stealth. Every cell in Wright's body strained to dismiss Wezin as a lying alien sack of shit. And yet, as the Stardestroyer broke orbit, loaded with weapons and the best souls Earth had to offer, that twisting in Wright's gut remained. He and his crew now raced toward two possible fates: make the Zanari pay for their sins and show humanity's strength, or lead Earth into the total annihilation of an unwinnable war. The Stardestroyer was out here now, the die cast. Her mission would either be Earth's salvation or its epitaph. As the Stardestroyer entered Zanari space, Jeffrey Wright paced the bridge, his face lined with the weight of his decision. Wezin's warning echoed in his mind, a taunting whisper that he couldn't shake. Every instinct screamed at him to trust the intel, to turn back before it was too late. But he thought of Zara's broken body, of the Zanari's cruel laughter, and his tenacity hardened. Aborting now would only show weakness, invite more atrocities. He had to see this through. "Captain, Long-range sensors are picking up multiple contacts ahead, the tactical officer reported, his voice tight with tension. It's a massive Zanari fleet, sir. They're lying in wait, just like Wazen said. Jeffrey gripped the edge of the command console, his fist clenched. The Stardestroyer was formidable, but against an entire armada, they didn't stand a chance in a straight fight. How the hell did they know we were coming? Jeffrey growled. Could be they hacked our communication systems, Navigator Adira suggested. Or maybe that son of a bitch Wazen sold us out. Jeffrey shook his head. It didn't matter now. They had to adapt fast. All right, listen up, he barked. We're not going to win this by brute force, but we've got a cloaking device, and I say we use it. We slip past their fleet, get a strike team to the surface. We find the bastards who killed Zara and drag them back to Earth to face justice. He turned to his second-in-command, Marcus Riker, a steady presence at his side. Marcus, I need you with me on this. You, me, and Kessler. We're going in quiet. Marcus nodded grimly. I've got your back, Captain. We'll make them pay. Liam Kessler, the ship's top security officer, stepped forward. I'm in, sir. For Zara. Jeffrey clasped their shoulders, a silent thank you. Then he turned to the crew. The rest of you, your job is to keep the ship hidden and safe. If things go sideways down there, you get the hell out of Zanari space and back to Earth. Understood? A chorus of yes, sir, rang out across the bridge. They knew the risks, the stakes. They were ready. Activating the experimental cloaking device, the Stardestroyer shimmered and vanished from view. Slipping past the waiting Zanari fleet, they descended toward the planet's surface, a ghostly dagger in the dark. The strike team landed covertly near the looming structure of the Zanari High Command, its spires piercing the smoggy sky. Jeffrey, Marcus, and Liam moved swiftly through the shadows, their weapons ready. They breached the command center, alarms shrieking in their wake. Zanari soldiers fell before their onslaught, green blood splattering the walls. They fought their way to the inner sanctum, where they found their target. General Kraxus, the monster who had ordered Zara's death. Kraxus sneered as they burst into the room, his eyes glinting with malice. Foolish humans, he hissed. You think you can defy us? We are the Zanari, the masters of the galaxy. Jeffrey leveled his rifle at Kraxus's head. You murdered an innocent girl, he snarled. You tortured a child. You'll pay for what you did to Zara. Kraxus laughed, a cruel grating sound. The girl? She was nothing, a means to an end. Her death served its purpose. It brought you here, into our trap. Jeffrey's finger tightened on the trigger, rage boiling in his veins. But before he could fire, alarms began to wail, a deafening cacophony. Sir, the Zanari fleet has detected us, Marcus shouted over the comm. They have some kind of advanced sensors. They've penetrated the cloak. The Stardestroyer is under heavy fire. Jeffrey's heart stopped. His ship, his crew. They were being torn apart up there. And now, as he heard the pounding of Zanari boots converging on their position, he realized the terrible truth. They were trapped with no way out. He looked at Kraxus, at the sneering face of his enemy. He thought of Zara, of the precious lives aboard the Stardestroyer, lives he had sworn to protect. In that moment, he knew what he had to do. The Stardestroyer limped back to Earth, her hull scarred and battered from the brutal engagement. On the bridge, General Marcus Trenton stood with his hands clasped behind his back, watching the blue marble of humanity's homeworld grow larger on the display. His face was etched with lines of exhaustion and worry. Status report, he barked. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Chen, his XO, stepped forward. We've sustained heavy damage, sir. Engineering reports the FTL drive is offline. Weapons systems are at 40% capacity, and we've got multiple hull breaches on decks 3 through 7. Trenton nodded grimly. Casualties? 23 dead, 47 wounded. Medical bay is overwhelmed. The general's eyes hardened. Good men and women lost. But they'd struck a crippling blow against the Zanari. The cost had been high, but it bought Earth precious time. As soon as they achieved orbit, Trenton was summoned to an emergency session of Earth's Defense Council. The vast chamber buzzed with tension as he entered, the faces of Earth's most powerful leaders, grave and ashen. Admiral Zhao, head of the council, fixed Trenton with an unwavering focus. "Report, General. What the hell happened out there?" Trenton straightened his shoulders and launched into a detailed account of the mission. He laid out the intel they'd gathered, the devastating raids on Zanari supply lines, and the climactic battle at the shipyards. When he finished, a heavy silence fell over the room. "My God," whispered one of the counselors. "They mean to invade us?" "Yes," Trenton said firmly. "The Zanari see us as a threat now. They're amassing a massive fleet to crush Earth and subjugate humanity." Panicked murmurs erupted around the table. Admiral Zhao raised a hand for silence. "What do you propose we do, General?" Trenton activated a holodisplay showing a map of Zanari space. "We hit them again and again. The Stardestroyer's stealth capabilities give us an edge. We conduct lightning raids on their key facilities, cripple their ability to mass their forces. Meanwhile, Earth fortifies its defenses and constructs more ships of the Stardestroyer class." "You want us to provoke further conflict?" a counselor demanded, "after barely escaping annihilation?" "With all due respect," Trenton growled, "the conflict is already here. The Zanari are coming. We can either wait for them to finish preparing their invasion force, or we can bloody their noses and buy ourselves time." Hours of heated debate followed. In the end, faced with the specter of impending invasion, the council reluctantly approved Trenton's plan. Over the next months, the Star Destroyer became a phantom menace, striking deep into Zanari territory. Shipyards erupted in flames. Supply convoys vanished without a trace. The Zanari military machine ground to a halt, unable to mass its forces in the face of these precision strikes. But it all came to a head during the assault on the Zanari's primary shipyard. Trenton watched from the bridge as waves of Earth fighters swarmed the massive facility. Explosions bloomed in the void as Zanari ships fell to pieces. "Sir," the comm officer shouted, "Lieutenant Rivera's fighter is hit. He's going down." Trenton's blood ran cold as he watched Rivera's crippled craft plummet toward the shipyard's surface. Without hesitation, he grabbed his sidearm and strode toward the hangar bay. "General, what are you doing?" Commander Chen demanded. "I'm not leaving him behind," Trenton growled. "Assemble a strike team. We're going in." Minutes later, Trenton led a team of hardened Marines through the chaos of the crumbling shipyard. Zanari troops swarmed everywhere, exchanging fire with the human strike force. They found Rivera pinned down behind a fallen bulkhead, his leg mangled and bleeding. "Took you long enough, sir," Rivera grinned through gritted teeth. "Can't let you have all the fun, Lieutenant," Trenton replied, hefting Rivera's arm over his shoulder. But as they fought their way back toward their extraction point, they found themselves cut off and surrounded. Zanari forces closed in from all sides, their alien weapons spitting death. "This is it," Trenton thought grimly, checking the charge on his rifle. "We gave it one hell of a run." Suddenly, a familiar voice crackled over their comms. "General Trenton, this way, quickly!" A door slid open nearby, revealing a Zanari in officer's garb. It was Wazin, the defector who had warned them of the invasion. "You!" Trenton gaped. "What are you doing here?" "There's no time," Wazin hissed. "Follow me if you want to live." With no other choice, Trenton and his team followed the Zanari through a maze of corridors. Wazin led them to a hangar where a shuttle waited. "Go!" Wazin shouted. "I'll hold them off." As Trenton's team piled into the shuttle, a Zanari assassin burst into the hangar. Wazin threw himself at the attacker, buying the humans precious seconds to escape. The last thing Trenton saw before the hangar doors closed was Wazin falling, a vibroblade buried in his chest. The shuttle rocketed away from the doomed shipyard, racing back to the Star Destroyer. Behind them, the massive facility erupted into a fireball that lit up space for parsecs around. Days later, as Earth celebrated their victory, Trenton stood alone in his quarters aboard the Star Destroyer. The cost had been high. Rivera was still in critical condition. And Wazin, Trenton owed the Zanari defector his life, but could he truly trust him? A priority message flashed on his terminal. New intel suggested the Zanari invasion had indeed been postponed, but it was only a matter of time before they regrouped. Trenton's fists clenched. The real war was just beginning, and humanity would need every advantage, every ally it could get to survive the coming storm. The Stardestroyer limped back to Earth, her hull scorched and battered. General Marcus Trenton stood on the bridge, his face etched with exhaustion and worry. Beside him lay the unconscious form of Wezin, the Zanari defector who had saved their lives at great cost to himself. As soon as they achieved orbit, a squad of heavily armed soldiers boarded to escort Wezin to a secure facility. Trenton watched them carry the alien away, conflicting emotions warring within him. Days passed in a blur of debriefings and interrogations. Trenton found himself before the Earth Defense Council, recounting the mission that had crippled the Zanari shipyards. "And you trust this Wezin?" Admiral Chen's voice dripped with skepticism. Trenton met her gaze unflinchingly. "He saved my team, Admiral, at great personal risk." "Or it could all be an elaborate ruse," General Santos cut in. "We can't risk the fate of humanity on the word of one alien." The debate raged for hours. Trenton stood his ground, backed by Lieutenant Rivera, who had witnessed Weazen's bravery firsthand. "I was there," Rivera insisted. "I saw him take that blade meant for me. No one's that good an actor." In the end, the council reached a compromise. Weazen would be allowed to cooperate, but under the strictest security protocols. Armed with the defector's intelligence, Trenton pored over star charts and tactical readouts. A plan began to form, audacious and fraught with risk. "We hit their staging area," he announced to his assembled officers. "A small team infiltrates, plants explosives. Meanwhile, the Star Destroyer draws out their fleet." Murmurs of disbelief filled the room. Lieutenant Commander Chen voiced what they were all thinking. "Sir, that's suicide." Trenton's eyes hardened. "It's our best shot at stopping this invasion before it starts." He handpicked his strike team. Rivera, still sporting a limp from his injuries, volunteered immediately. And to everyone's surprise, so did Wezen. "I know the layout," the Zanari insisted. "I can get you in and out." Trenton studied the alien's face, searching for any hint of deception. Finding none, he nodded grimly. The Star Destroyer dropped out of hyperspace on the edge of the Zanari system. Trenton's team loaded into a stealth shuttle, tension thick in the air. Human soldiers eyed Wezen warily, hands never far from their weapons. "Remember," Trenton addressed them, "we're all that stands between Earth and annihilation. Trust each other, or we're dead before we start." The shuttle slipped past the distracted Zanari fleet, the sounds of battle with the Star Destroyer echoing in the distance. They touched down on the staging area's landing pad, and the real work began. Moving swiftly through eerily familiar corridors, Wezen guided them to key structural points. Trenton's team planted their explosives with practiced efficiency. "Contact!" Rivera's shout shattered the silence. A Zanari patrol rounded the corner, weapons blazing. In the chaos that followed, Trenton lost sight of Wezen. Then he heard Rivera cry out in pain. Through the smoke, he saw the Zanari defector throwing himself between the lieutenant and an enemy blade. They fought their way back to the shuttle, Wezen's lifeblood leaving a trail behind them. As they lifted off, the alien's breathing grew labored. "The detonator!" Wezen gasped, pressing a device into Trenton's hand. "Finish it. Show no mercy." Trenton hesitated for just a moment before pressing the button. Behind them, the Zanari staging area erupted in a series of cataclysmic explosions. Back aboard the Star Destroyer, Trenton watched the Zanari fleet scatter in disarray. They had done it. Earth had won a reprieve. But the taste of victory was bitter. In the medbay, Wezen drew his final breaths, surrounded by the humans he had given his life to save. Trenton stood before the assembled crew, his voice heavy with emotion. "We gather to honor a hero, not human but no less courageous." As the general spoke of sacrifice and unity, he knew the real war was just beginning. But thanks to Wezen, to Jeffrey Wright, to all those who had fallen, humanity now stood a fighting chance. Trenton squared his shoulders, ready to lead Earth's forces into an uncertain future. The Zanari would return, of that he had no doubt, but this time humanity would be ready. The years after Wazen's sacrifice were a blur of feverish activity. General Marcus Trenton oversaw the rapid expansion of Earth's defenses, his days filled with endless meetings and strategy sessions. New shipyards sprung up in orbit, churning out vessels at a breakneck pace. On the ground, planetary shield generators hummed to life, their energy fields shimmering in the atmosphere. But even as humanity fortified its home, a gnawing dread ate at Trenton. He paced the war room, studying holographic displays of Zanari space. Intelligence reports trickled in, each more concerning than the last. "They're rebuilding faster than we anticipated," Lieutenant Commander Chen said, her voice tight with worry. "Our raids bought us time, but—" Trenton nodded grimly, but it wasn't enough. 3 years to the day after their victory at the Zanari shipyards, Trenton received the news he'd been dreading. A stealth probe transmitted its findings before being destroyed. The Zanari invasion force had swelled beyond their worst projections. Trenton's blood ran cold as he studied the footage. Vast armadas filled the screen, dwarfing anything humanity could muster. But it was the close-up images that truly chilled him. Zanari soldiers, twisted and augmented, their eyes burning with inhuman rage. "My God," Chen whispered, "what have they done to themselves?" Trenton's mind raced. Their current defenses would be overwhelmed in days. There had to be another way. He called an emergency meeting of Earth's military leadership, laying out a desperate plan. "We hit their cloning facility," he said, pointing to a heavily fortified installation deep in Zanari space. "Take out their super soldier program at the source." The room erupted in protests. "It's suicide," one admiral shouted. "We'd never make it past their outer defenses." Trenton smacked his head on the table. "If we do nothing, Earth falls. This is our only shot." After hours of heated debate, Trenton received reluctant authorization. He immediately sought out Lieutenant Alex Rivera, the young officer who distinguished himself in countless battles. "I need your best," Trenton said, his eyes boring into Rivera. "This mission, it's beyond dangerous, but it's our only hope." Rivera nodded, his face a mask of dedication. "I'm in, sir. Whatever it takes." Trenton hesitated, then added, "There's one more thing. We're bringing in outside help. A Zanari defector named Zalkari. He claims to have inside knowledge of the facility." Rivera's eyes widened. "Sir, after Wazen, can we trust him?" "We have no choice," Trenton said grimly, "but keep your eyes open." Days later, Rivera's team huddled in the hold of a stealth shuttle, streaking towards Zanari space. Zalkari, a hulking figure with mottled green skin, crouched nearby. His eyes darted nervously between the human soldiers. "Remember," Rivera addressed his team, "we're ghosts, in and out before they know we're there." The shuttle slipped past the distracted Zanari fleet, the sounds of battle with Earth's diversionary force echoing in the distance. They touched down on a barren moon orbiting their target. Rivera's team moved swiftly, utilizing Zalkari's codes to bypass security measures. The facility loomed before them, a sprawling complex of twisting metal and pulsing energy fields. As they penetrated deeper, an eerie silence fell. Rivera felt the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. Something was wrong. They rounded a corner and froze. Before them stretched a vast chamber filled with rows upon rows of gestation tanks. Inside each, a Zanari child floated, their tiny bodies already showing signs of cybernetic enhancement. "This," Rivera breathed, "this is an abomination." Zalkari's face twisted with what might have been shame. They start the indoctrination process at birth. By the time they emerge, they know nothing but hate and loyalty to the Empire. Before Rivera could respond, alarms blared. Zanari security forces poured into the chamber, their weapons blazing. Child soldiers, some barely adolescent, charged with wild abandon. Rivera's team fought desperately, trying to avoid killing the brainwashed youths where possible, but the Zanari showed no such restraint. In the chaos, Rivera saw Zalkari raise his weapon, and gunned down Rivera's closest friend and second in command. "Traitor!" Rivera roared, but Zalkari had already disappeared into the melee. With half his team dead or wounded, Rivera made an agonizing decision. He triggered the explosives they'd planted, knowing it would kill thousands of innocent Zanari children. The facility rocked with explosions. Rivera fought his way through collapsing corridors, half carrying a wounded teammate. He emerged onto a landing pad to find Zalkari waiting, a cruel smile on his alien face. "You humans," the Zanari sneered. "So predictable in your compassion. It makes you weak." Rivera's rage boiled over. He charged Zalkari, the two warriors locked in brutal hand-to-hand combat. Fists and feet flew as they grappled, each fueled by the hatred of their respective races. Rivera felt something snap inside him. With a primal roar, he drove his combat knife into Zalkari's throat. The Zanari's eyes widened in shock, then went dark. Panting, Rivera staggered to his feet. In the distance, Zanari warships screamed towards the facility. He gathered his surviving team and raced for their shuttle. As they broke atmosphere, Rivera looked back at the burning facility. They'd dealt the Zanari a blow, but at what cost? He felt hollow, diminished. The face of every child he'd condemned burned in his mind. Upon their return to Earth, Trenton met them in the hangar bay. The general's face fell as he saw the empty eyes of Rivera and his team, the full weight of what they'd done etched in their expressions. Trenton opened his mouth to speak, but no words came. He simply nodded, a silent acknowledgement of the terrible burden they now carried. As Rivera stumbled towards the medbay, Trenton watched him go. The general's fists clenched at his sides. They'd won this battle, but he feared the war was taking an even greater toll on their very souls. The price of victory was growing steeper with each passing day, and Trenton wondered how much more humanity could afford to pay. Little did he know, the true test of their tenacity was yet to come. The Zanari.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.